The Norman masters contributed a wealth of synonyms to the language. Before the Normans, there was one word, kingly. Now the language was enriched with royal, regal, and sovereign. This capacity to express fine distinctions now became one of the hallmarks of the English language. The Norman conquest was a linguistic blessing in disguise.
From its French overlords, English acquired a rich variety of new vocabularies for art, learning, medicine, and high fashion. In the law, French supplied virtually all the commonly used terms: felony, assault, larceny, perjury, plaintiff, defendant, judge and jury, even attorney. The same was true for the monarchy, the church, and the military, all areas of power and authority. So great, indeed, is our debt to the Normans that a mischievous Frenchman once suggested that English should be known as a dialect of French.
English gained a staggering 10,000 new words from the Normans. These twin traditions, Saxon and Norman, have given us a vocabulary at least twice as large as French, Spanish, Italian, or German. So anyone who writes and speaks in English has a vast menu of words to choose from.
Sir Walter Scott pointed out that a medieval banquet could be described in a whole alternative vocabulary. Chicken could be poultry, deer could be venison, sheep could be mutton, calves could be veal. To this day, the use of French words has a certain snob value, suggesting sophistication or savoir-faire.
The structure of the language was changing too. Sir Koning is now the king. Das Königes is now of the king. Tham Könige is now to the king. So the first big difference between Old English and this emerging Middle English is in the use of prepositions, words like of and to instead of word endings. Without word endings, word order becomes crucial. The king meets the bishop. Change the order of these words, and you change the whole meaning of the sentence. The bishop meets the king. This was the English, Frenchified and Latinized, spoken around the year 1350 by the courtiers, merchants, and scholars of the capital. They gave this prestige variety an automatic superiority, the beginnings of standard English. And here we see them listening to perhaps the first great writer in English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer, author of the Canterbury Tales.
Here beginneth the book of the Tales of Canterbury. One that April with his sure is sota, the drucht of March hath persed to the rota, and bathed every vine in sich liquor, of which virtue engendered is the flour. Then longen folk to goon on pilgrimages.
Chaucer is one of the writers of genius on whom English has always depended for its imaginative breakthroughs. He wrote about all classes of men and women, the knight, the priest, the prioress, and the wife of Bath. Chaucer was alive to the potential of English. He pokes fun at Yorkshire accents. He dazzles the reader with wordplay. And he mocks the pretensions of people who claim to know French and Latin. Chaucer was the first English writer to be buried in Westminster Abbey.
It's ironic that Chaucer's tomb is inscribed in Latin because he is the first writer of genius in our story who consciously chose the English language as the medium for his inspiration. In his early years, according to the fashion of the day, he had worked in Latin and French. It was a bold, almost avant-garde decision to write in English, and his success gave a new authority to the mother tongue.
Listening to recordings of Chaucer's English, we can hear that though the vocabulary is essentially the same, the pronunciation is still different.
Right, stand by, studio, and we'll try a take.
Line 180, please, Mary.
Okay.
Can we start from there? There was also a nun. Take it quite steadily. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay. There was also a nunny, a prioresse, that of his smiling was full simple and coy. Here greatest oath was but by Saint Eloi.
The first one is the word nun, and the vowel sound at this time must have been oh, so it should be there was also a nun.
A nun.
A nun.
There was also a nun, a prioresse, that of her smiling was full simple and coy.
That was needs to go was. It's not
Was.
was. Yes.
That of her smiling was full simple and coy. Her greatest oath was but be Saint Eloi, and she was clepped Madame Eglantine.
She, of course, should be she. The vowel in he and she is an A, not an E. She.
She. She spake full fire, and fetisly, after the school of Stratford at a boa.
I think that's very good, Norman.
Indeed, it's pretty good, yes.
So it's Mary next, please.
There was also a nun, a prioress, that of her smiling was full simple and coy. Her greatest oath was but be Saint Eloi, and she was clepped Madame Eglantine.
The father of English literature stands at the head of a great tradition, which includes many of the writers honored here, especially men like John Dryden and Samuel Johnson, and of course, William Shakespeare. As it happened, some 75 years after Chaucer's death, it was right here within the precincts of Westminster Abbey that the man who published much of Chaucer's work, England's first printer, set up his press. And that was William Caxton.
This is Caxton's own work. The first page of the first book ever printed in the English language. Here in the Weald of Kent, Caxton's birthplace, Graham Williams is a printer in the same tradition. He works with a Caxton-style hand press, and also the laborious pen and ink method replaced by the printing revolution, a cornerstone of the Renaissance. He imagines that Caxton was a rather contemporary character.
I think he was a remarkably good businessman. That was his training. That's really what his life was about until he was about 50 years old. And I'm quite certain that he was looking at the new technology. He would have dealt with books that were handwritten. Suddenly printing came along. I think it must have intrigued him. The idea of multiplying copies.
But when the first printing press began to roll in England, Caxton faced a problem. In an oral culture, the few who could write tended to spell as they spoke. There were variant spellings for almost every English word. Besides, there were at least 5 distinct varieties of English, an evolution of the Old English language map. In the north was Northern English. In the south, the English of Alfred the Great's Old Kingdom. In Kent, there was the separate variety of the southeast. The Midlands were divided east and west. This is remarkably similar to the Saxon map, and it still holds good today.